Hi guys, this video that I'm going to do is going to be different. It's a video that I've not done before, that I've not put on YouTube. I've wanted to do it for a while, but I've been apprehensive about the kind of response that I'm going to get from it. Hopefully all positive, but if I do get some negative feedback from it, oh well, what can I do? Anyway, so this video is I'm going to do a video about living with autism because I was diagnosed at 14. I was diagnosed with autism, diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome and dyspraxia. And yeah, I thought I'd do a little video about my life with autism. So I suppose I'll start from childhood, the beginning. I've heard that some experts say that autistic people are the only people who can remember things as young as, say, the age of like toddler age or even before. Now, and I don't know if that's true, but it might be, because I can certainly remember things from that age. I can vaguely remember having my nappy changed. I told a friend this and she didn't believe me. She found it really hard to believe, but it's true. I can remember having my nappy changed, and I can remember falling down the stairs when I was 1 and crying in my dad's arms. So, but the thing is, it's weird. Although I have, it's weird that I can remember things from years ago that mean absolutely nothing to me, but there's things from last week that I forget, sometimes important things. But, like for instance, when I was 2, we used to go, me and my sister used to go to Sunday school, and then we'd go for a church service afterwards. Now, there was a girl from her school that used to sit at the back of the church, and I don't remember her. I don't even know her name. I don't know anything about her. I don't even, as far as I'm aware, she wasn't even a friend of my sister's. She certainly wasn't someone that my sister used to hang out with outside of school. So, but for some reason I remember her, but she means absolutely nothing to me. So I don't choose what to remember. There's just certain things that I can remember. And so basically okay, so I'm going to talk a bit about, I'll talk about sensory issues now, I think, because sensory issues are a big part of autism and something that many autistic people face. I mean, I think it's, well, I'd be surprised if I ever met an autistic person that doesn't have any sensory issues of some kind, or never has. But I had sensory issues when I was young, lots of sensory issues. I will say, actually, if you knew me when I was a toddler, even to like upwards of 5, I mean, if you knew me when I was really young, you wouldn't believe I'm the same person now, because I was much more autistic now than I am. I was much more autistic then, than I am now. So anyway, sensory issues, yeah. So I had lots of sensory issues as a child, particularly as a toddler. Some of them were good, some of them were bad. The bad ones were mainly noise, and the good ones were mainly sight. So the bad ones, for instance, I didn't like the sound of train engines. I remember being in a station and burying my head in my dad's lap and him covering my ears because I didn't like the sound of the engines outside. I was fine once I got on the train, because I was born in London, and we used to we moved down to Cornwall when I was 8 months old, and we used to go to we used to go back up to London sometimes to see friends because we've got friends in London. And I and what they would do, my parents would do. My dad would pick me up. Um, my mum would cover my ears, and then they'd run onto the train. And I was fine once I got on the train, and I loved going up to London and seeing the red cliffs of Dawlish and Tidmouth and all that kind of area. Um, and it was great once I was on it, but I hated it. Another and bangers, fireworks, really loud fireworks was something else I really didn't like. I guess it was the loud noise that I didn't like. Every time we went to see fireworks, when the bangers came on, we just had to leave because I just couldn't cope with it. And something else, which this one wasn't a loud noise, so it's kind of strange that, it was I used to go to a playgroup in an assessment centre, and we used to go swimming every Friday. And there was something about the noise of the generator that I didn't like. It wasn't loud, but I don't know what it was, but there was just something about the noise of it that I didn't like. And I was only 3 at the time, and I remember being in the pool, someone holding me up on my back, and I was more scared. I remember being more scared of the sound of the generator than I was of actually drowning, even though the generator was of no threat to me, and I was much more likely to drown. But yeah, so I didn't like that, and I didn't like the texture of certain foods. Vegetables. Well, I've never been one for eating vegetables, really, which is not good, I know. And certain clothing, like shirts. For a long time, for years, I didn't like wearing shirts. So, I didn't like wearing ties in school either. So, but as I say, I had good sensory issues too, which I said were mainly sight. Like, for instance, there used to be, quite near where I live, there's a yellow salt bin the side of the road, which when the weather's bad and it's icy and that, I used to like seeing that. And there was a street in Penzance near where I live. There was a big generator on the back of a building in Bread Street, which I used to like seeing as well. And on that street, actually, there was a record shop called Days Gone By, and the guy had stuck loads of vinyl to the roof, which I liked as well. And when I was about 5, I had one of my best friends lived in quite a rundown cottage. Well, I say quite rundown. It was really rundown, actually, because, when they bought it, that's all they could afford. And when I say run down, I mean when they eventually managed to get a grant from the council to do it up, because they couldn't afford it otherwise. They had to replace the roof because the roof was leaking really badly, and they had to gut the entire interior of the house, the cottage. So but yeah, as I say, my best friend, one of my best friends and his 2 siblings, they were allowed to draw on the walls. I guess because the house was so run down. The plan was to get it done up soon. Their dad was going to do as much of it as he could, but sadly he passed away, died in a bike crash. And so that never happened. But what happened was that never happened. But anyway, what did but yeah, oh yeah, that's what I was going to say. But they were allowed to draw on the walls. I mean, one of their living room walls was covered in graffiti. Watercolour paint apparently they used, but I guess it was because the plan was to get the house done up soon. So But they didn't get it done up. Well, I say eventually they did, but I don't think their mum cared really because it was so run down, the house anyway. I mean, it was, it really was in quite a bad state. So because of that, you know, because of that, I like graffiti and I like rundown buildings and people that live. I like rundown houses and buildings and people that live in rundown houses because of that. So, yeah, I did have, yeah, when I started talking, it was all gibberish. So only my mum could really understand what I was saying because, yeah, as I say, it was all gibberish. I couldn't speak properly. So I had to go to speech therapy for a year, which I did, and it was very helpful. And I remember they taught me to make, I remember I was taught to make this sound. Apparently, they do teach when they give people speech therapy, that's a sound that they often teach people to use that, to make that sound, to help them to learn to talk. And I still remember actually being taught to make that noise, that sound. So yeah, and so when I was 3, a health visitor came round to see me because they did in those days, and she tried to get me to do that test they do by stacking wooden blocks on top of each other. Now, I wasn't interested at all. I didn't show any interest at all, so she suggested to my mum that I might have learning difficulties. Didn't say anything about autism because we knew nothing about it then. I'm not even sure if she did. So she suggested that I should go to the assessment centre in Penzance, and I did. And they said that I should attend their playgroup and until I start school. So I did, and it helped me with learning to socialise with social skills, and my mum says it helped me to talk as well, helped me to learn to talk properly and get better speech skills. So it was good in that respect. So when we went there to have a look round, the woman that was in charge at the time was really nice and friendly, but unfortunately she went on maternity leave, and she was replaced with somebody who, quite frankly, should never have worked with children. Never mind children with disabilities or special needs or whatever. She was just not fit to work with children. I won't mention her name. I better not because, I don't want to get done for slander. But, I thought it was only slander if it's not true. So anyway, the first time we went there, on my first day there, she insisted that my mum left me on my own. Now, at that time, I hated being away from my mum. I didn't even like being alone with my dad. I wasn't scared of him. I had nothing to fear, but I was so close to my mum. I hated being away from her. And to the point where I used to go and stay with friends at weekends. A couple of friends I had, I often used to go and stay with them at weekends. Because Mum wanted to get me to socialise and learn to be with other children, but it took me quite a while before I got used to her leaving me there, because I remember times of crying my eyes out, clinging on to her, telling her to take me home, and sometimes she would, sometimes she'd leave me there, and by the end of the evening I was all right, but it took me a long time to get used to being away from Mum for a long time. But I remember when I used to go to the assessments, when I used to go to the playgroup, I remember she would give me a little mint to get me to go. And I remember going in the minibus driven by Jan, and I used to like that actually. So anyway, yeah, back to this woman. The first day she insisted that my mum shouldn't stay with me. She insisted that she leave, and Mum did go, even though she she shouldn't have. I didn't want her to go, and she didn't want to leave me. And she probably thinks she should have just refused, or taken me, or just taken me and left if that's what she was insisting. And this woman used to shout at children. I mean, she was horrible from what I remember of her. I mean, I remember when we were in a room, and I was with some other people, and I remember seeing her walk past and cringing just looking at her because she was so horrible. So anyway, I'll move on to primary school now. I started school when I was about 5.5 because I was a late developer. As I said, late developing in talking, and I was having health problems too because I was having a big problem with gluten and wheat. Because it just basically went through me all the time. Whenever I ate wheat, it would just go straight through me. It would just give me the shits. So that was not good. And I had a specialist doctor, but he wasn't. I had a specialist doctor, and, he didn't do enough really, because he actually knew that I was autistic. He could have told my mum, but he didn't want to. There were other people that knew, people at the playgroup that knew as well, but they said, the classic excuse, they didn't want to label me, but I just think that was an excuse not to take any responsibility for it. So anyway, it was stunting my overall development. It was stunting my physical and mental development. I didn't grow really for about a year. And my mum read an article. My mum actually said to my specialist doctor that she thought it might be more than just a physical thing. She thought there might have something to do with my mentality. And she read an article in a magazine that saying that in some children gluten can affect some children, can affect their development, and she thought that's what might be the case with me. So she decided to stop feeding me wheat. I used to eat rice cakes and eat rice porridge, and she was right, actually. That was the case with me. And but she had to read that for herself. She just by chance read it in a magazine. She wasn't told that by my doctor or anything. So but thankfully that she did stop giving me wheat, and because of that, it really helped my development. And had it not been for that, I could still be severely autistic as I was back then, because my parents used to wonder if I'd ever be independent enough to be able to look after myself. But I'm actually but I am. I mean, I've got my own 2-bedroom bungalow that I live in. Well, I don't own it, but I rent it, and I've got I can go out on my own. I can catch buses, I can catch trains, I can go to London on my own, and I can get to pretty much anywhere in London that I want to go on my own. I can navigate on tubes and buses, even if I get a little bit lost sometimes. I can navigate well, and the underground is another fascination of mine. I absolutely love it. I love going on the underground. I just love the fact that there's this amazing system completely underground that can get you to most places in London. I think it's just an amazing system, and I don't think people really truly appreciate how amazing it is. They use it every day, take it for granted, but what it must have taken to build and design it, it's just incredible. Um, but anyway, so yeah, I can, and sometimes I go to Plymouth on my own or whatever. I might just get up one morning on a Saturday and decide to go to Plymouth on my own for something to do. So I can do that. So yeah, anyway, back to primary school. So when I started primary school, I had some good mates, before primary school, and I had good friends in primary school, and it was okay. Primary school was fine on the whole. Um, and so, you know, yeah, I had good friends on the whole, and primary school was all right for me on the whole. I went to as I say, I wasn't diagnosed with autism until I was 14, so until then we didn't know. Um, so yeah, I went to a mainstream school, and yeah, as I say, it was all right on the whole. I had some good friends, and my mum used to invite my friends over regularly for me to socialise and that kind of thing. And and because in primary school you don't have that social ladder that you have in secondary school. Um, yeah, I stayed on an extra year at primary school because my mum and the teachers thought it would be a good idea for me to move up with my friends because a lot of my friends were like it in the year below, but it didn't make any difference because we parted ways after primary school. They made new friends in secondary school, and we kind of we parted ways. So, but secondary school, that was a different matter altogether because, as I say, in secondary school you have that social ladder. Now I think it's wherever you get thrown onto it is where you might stay throughout school. You can climb up it, and I mean, you can fall down the social ladder, but you can't climb up it. If you're at the bottom, like I was, you can't climb up it. You're there. You're at the bottom. You're staying there. I mean, I couldn't really have been less popular if I tried, to be honest. It really wasn't good for me going to a mainstream school. It wasn't. I mean, they pretty much didn't teach me anything in school. I barely learned anything in all the time I was there. It really was a waste of time for me. And I know other people. I've got autistic friends that didn't go to school, that left early, and I can understand why, because if they're not getting the right help and support and teaching, which I didn't, and so because I was quiet, well behaved, and I didn't really cause any trouble, I was just ignored basically most of the time. And it was the same for the other kids, my peers. I mean, most of the boys would just ignore me, and girls would either ignore me or make it clear that they didn't like me, which was not good. I mean, it was mainly girls that made it clear they didn't like me, and which is a shame because I wanted to be popular with girls for the obvious reason, but that didn't really happen. And and for a long time really, the only girl that ever showed an interest in me just was my first girlfriend. Actually, in the end, I decided to go out with her just to have a girlfriend. Someone oh, I better not well I don't know if I should really say this, but I'll just say the people at the top, the people that are the prom queen and the prom king types, the jocks, whatever you want to call them, the popular lads wouldn't have touched her with a barge pole. Let's put it that way. Not to be not meaning to be harsh, but it's true. So yeah, that's it. So that was not good. So it wasn't really a happy time there. I actually I left when I didn't do my GCSEs in the end, because when I was 16 I started going to a social club for people with special needs and disabilities, not just autistic people but lots of people. There were people with different disabilities and whatnot there, and I met someone called Olivia, an amazing person, as perfect as a woman can get in my opinion. But what I and she was at college doing a course, a foundation course, a key skills course, and I really liked the sound of that. So I had a talk with my mum, and I told her that I want to go there, and she said, okay, we'll try and get you in. So she did. Though my dad wrote the school a letter and they managed to get me in. So I did go there, and so in February 2000 I started there, and it was great because I'd actually met her best friend Joanne before that, and she really liked me, and she wanted to go out with me, and I was considering mulling it over. She actually said to Olivia when she first met me, she whispered to her, you never told me he was so hot. Words to that effect. So anyway, so I started college there, and it was really good. It was a nice, friendly, relaxed environment. I had good friends, and I made good friends, and the tutors were nice. Got on well with them. I had good friends, and on Valentine's Day in 2000, me and Joe did get together, and we were together for nearly 8 years. And so college was really good on the whole, and I really enjoyed it. And then I did the next course. This course was called Options Plus, and then I did Work Options, which was just another 2 days of work experience instead of one, but apart from that, very similar. And then I went on to do a really good foundation course at Multi Options. I don't know if they still do it, at Cornwall College, called Multi Options. I don't know if they still do it, but if they do, it's good for people that want, people like me, because I've got a few autistic friends that have done that course, and it was really good for them. So it's good for people that want to do a foundation course, that are not ready for mainstream, or people that want a year of a foundation course to settle themselves into college. And it's good because what it is basically, I think we chose like 5 or 6 different options, and then we did 6 weeks of each. So I did animal care, I did cooking, retail, sport, art. And when I did excuse me. God, sorry, hang on. Excuse me, God, how rude. Excuse me, sorry about that. When I did animal care, I decided that I wanted to go to Duchy College the next year and do an animal care course. And I never thought I would do a mainstream course, but I did. I managed to do it. And so the next year I went to Duchy and I did introductory certificate in animal care, which was mainly practical, but some theory as well. And that went well. I did well at that, and then I did the next course. I did national certificate in animal care, which was a mix of, much more of a balanced mix of practical and theory work. And, I did well in that. I think I did even better in that one. I didn't do advanced the next course up because that was too much hard work for me, I thought. But while I was working at ICAC, I did work. I did work experience at a farm park, and some of you, for any of my friends of you that some of my friends of you that watch this, you will know where I'm talking about. Thankfully, it closed down because it really wasn't a good place to work in the end. It was fine at first, the owner. My mum went to see the owner, explained my situation, and he said, "Yeah, it's fine. I'm happy to take him on." And but I made a few mistakes that anyone could make, like, for instance, I forgot to lock a padlock. Anyone could make that mistake, and anyone that's worked with animals, I'm sure, has done at some point or another. But and a few other little things, and he threatened to kick me out, but he didn't. I just stayed there. In the end, I stayed there, until the end, even though, because it was easier than finding somewhere else. So I did that, and then the next year in NCAC, I just decided that because the tutor who was in charge of work experience, the person who was in charge of work experience was also a keeper at Paradise Park. So I just told her that I'd go there instead because it was easy, because she could just set that up. And so I did go there, and it was much better there because, everyone was much more understanding. They accepted me, and when I started, I was just someone that didn't know the ropes. I didn't know, I just didn't know anything about what to do there. So, I was taught and I learned, and I was never on my own until I was good enough, I was confident enough to be able to do jobs on my own, until they thought that I was confident enough. And I was there for nearly 12 years. I mean, I won't, and on the whole, there were good things and bad things about it, but the people the people I worked with were very accepting of me, and very, and appreciated all the hard work that I gave them, and all that. And as I said, there's things, it had its positives. I was there for nearly 12 years, but I could say bad things about that place, but I won't. I don't really want, because certain people might see, if I don't want to say any bad things about the place, even though I could. But anyway,